You talk too much, not with your mouth, with your emotions, your reactions, your need to explain. Real power is quiet. Real strength doesn't announce itself. The world will test you every day, trying to make you speak, trying to make you react. But the person who can stay silent under pressure controls the entire room. This audiobook isn't about words, it's about control. The discipline of silence is the foundation of unstoppable focus, mental dominance, and calm confidence. You lose authority every time you try to justify your choices. You think you're clarifying. You think you're helping people understand. But in reality, you're giving away power, piece by piece, every time you explain yourself to someone who doesn't deserve that explanation. People who truly lead don't convince. They decide. They don't defend their path. They walk it. Because every justification tells the world one thing: I'm not sure. And uncertainty kills influence faster than failure ever will. You don't need to explain. You need to execute. When you start your day, remember this rule. The more you talk about what you're going to do, the less you actually do it. Every "I'm planning to," every "I'm thinking about" drains the power of your commitment. Leaders move in silence because progress speaks for itself. Think of the people you admire most, the ones who seem unshakable. They don't rush to justify their opinions. They don't defend their standards. They simply live them day after day. That's what authority feels like. Quiet confidence. You don't need to explain. You need to execute. When you try to explain your goals to those who can't see your vision, you're wasting energy. They don't understand your hunger, your timeline, or your standard. They can't. They're not supposed to, because your mission wasn't designed for public approval. It was designed for personal execution. The loudest critics are always the least accomplished. They want you to stop and justify because they're too afraid to act themselves. Don't fall for it. Don't pause your momentum to satisfy their confusion. When they question you, why are you doing this? Why don't you slow down? Remember, their questions come from fear, not wisdom. You don't need to explain. You need to execute. Silence communicates certainty. When you say less, people fill the gaps with their own assumptions, and assumptions build mystery, curiosity, and power. In leadership, perception matters as much as performance. If you're constantly defending your decisions, you look uncertain. If you stand firm and let results speak, you look unstoppable. Every leader learns this lesson the hard way. At first, you want to be understood. You want people to know your intentions, to validate your work. But as you grow, you realize that validation is noise. It doesn't change outcomes. It doesn't pay off. Action does. You don't need to explain. You need to execute. When you face resistance, keep your composure. People will misunderstand you. They will judge your silence as arrogance, your confidence as stubbornness. That's fine. Let them. A real leader doesn't chase understanding. He commands respect through consistency. Imagine a general in the middle of a battlefield stopping to explain his plan to every soldier. He wouldn't survive the first hour, because leadership requires decisiveness, not discussion. Your job is to move the mission forward, not to make everyone comfortable with your choices. You don't need to explain. You need to execute. There's a hidden psychology behind this. Explaining too much is an attempt to control other people's opinions. But you can't. You never will. The more you try, the weaker you appear. Power comes from letting go, letting the results do the talking. Every "I'll show you" is louder than "let me explain." Every result you create eliminates the need for argument, because success silences everything: criticism, doubt, envy. Let your outcomes speak the language no one can debate. You don't need to explain. You need to execute. Think about how many times you've apologized for growing, for changing, for choosing better. "I'm sorry I'm busy. I'm sorry I can't make it." Stop apologizing for evolving. You're not obligated to shrink yourself to fit other people's expectations. The moment you stop explaining your standards, you start living by them. Your silence is not rudeness, it's focus. Your lack of explanation is not arrogance, it's self-respect. The world rewards those who protect their energy from meaningless conversations. Every no without explanation builds discipline. Every silent walk away reinforces strength. You don't need to explain. You need to execute. Now ask yourself, how many dreams have died in discussion? How many ideas have been suffocated by over-explanation, by needing everyone to agree before you act? Leaders act first, adjust later. They learn by doing, not by defending. Because clarity doesn't come from explaining, it comes from experience. If you wait for everyone to understand your vision, you'll wait forever. They'll never get it until it works. And when it works, you won't need to say a word. Results are the only explanation success requires. You don't need to explain, you need to execute. So starting today, practice silent execution. When you make a decision, don't broadcast it. Build it. When someone questions your choice, don't argue. Smile and keep moving. When doubt shows up, don't talk back. Work through it. That's how mental toughness grows. That's how self-trust becomes your armor. The next time you feel the urge to explain yourself, pause and remember. Every word is energy. Every justification is distraction. Every silence is power. Choose power. You don't need to explain. You need to execute. You've learned to stop defending your path. Now it's time to sharpen your most powerful weapon, awareness. Because silence isn't empty. It's full of observation. Chapter 2. Observation is your superpower. Silence isn't emptiness. Silence is data. When you stop talking, you start seeing. And what you see while everyone else is busy reacting, that's your advantage. The world trains you to speak fast, post fast, respond fast. But leadership is built on the opposite skill, the ability to pause, to watch, to read a room before you move. Observation is your superpower, because the one who watches the longest wins the longest. Look at any great strategist in history, military commanders, investors, athletes, even great parents. They all have one thing in common: patience before action. They let others reveal their patterns, their fears, their weaknesses, and then they move with precision. Observation is chess. Talking is checkers. You don't win by being first. You win by being accurate, and accuracy is born in silence. When you're quiet, you notice what others miss. The shift in someone's tone when they lie. The tension in a room before conflict. The opportunity hiding inside chaos. Noise blinds people. Observation sharpens them. Most people talk to fill the space because silence makes them uncomfortable. But discomfort is a teacher. If you can sit in it, you'll learn what others run from. That's why leaders are calm in storms. They're busy watching while everyone else is panicking. You have to train this. Every day, practice listening without planning your response. Watch people without judging them. Learn their rhythm, their triggers, their tells. Because once you understand human patterns, you can predict outcomes. And that's power. Observation gives you leverage. When everyone speaks emotionally, you act strategically. They react to feelings, you respond to facts. They move fast, you move right. This is the invisible advantage that separates authority from noise. Think about a poker player. The worst one can't stop talking, can't stop showing what's in his mind. The best one studies every blink, every breath, every tremor. He wins not because of luck, but because he saw more. That's what real emotional control looks like. Measured observation before decisive action. The quiet person in any room is often the most dangerous, not because they threaten, but because they understand. They gather everything: words, energy, tone, body language, and when they finally speak, it lands like a hammer. Because observation makes every word calculated. You don't need to interrupt to dominate. You dominate by understanding more than the other person realizes. When you know how people move, you can influence outcomes without saying much. That's why calm leaders are magnetic. They make people feel seen without needing to perform. Observation also protects your emotions. When you're busy watching, you're not busy reacting. You're detached from chaos. You're collecting data. That's how you build mental toughness. You stop taking everything personally. Because the moment you see life as patterns, not attacks, you rise above the drama. For example, someone criticizes you at work. An average mind reacts, defends, argues, spirals. A disciplined mind observes. Why did they say that? What's their goal? What's their weakness? The observer doesn't get angry. The observer gets information. And information is the true form of power. Every great decision you'll ever make will come from what you notice, not what you say. Opportunities don't shout, they whisper. People don't reveal themselves in speeches. They reveal themselves in silence. The person who's too busy talking will miss both. Leaders know this. Every meeting, every conversation, every argument is a goldmine of signals. How people frame their words, how they delay their answers, how they breathe between phrases, it all reveals truth. When you become a watcher, the world becomes transparent. But observation requires ego death. You must accept that you don't have to prove how smart you are. You have to see how things really are. That's what separates the student from the master. Masters never stop observing. They reevaluate every plan, every person, every environment, constantly. That's why they adapt faster. They don't need to be right. They need to be aware. And awareness always wins over arrogance. Here's how to train your observation muscle. 1. Slow your reactions. Before answering a question, take a breath. That half-second pause rewires your mind to process instead of react. It makes you sound more confident, more thoughtful, more in control. 2. Watch patterns, not moments. One action means little. 10 actions mean everything. Don't judge people by what they say once. Judge them by what they repeat. 3. Detach emotionally. Observation fails when emotion interferes. See things as they are, not as you wish them to be. Neutrality is your greatest advantage. Let me repeat this truth. The person who observes has power. The person who reacts loses it. You don't need to talk to dominate. You don't need to argue to win. Your presence speaks louder than your explanations. When you walk into a room and you're calm, people feel it. They sense that you're not trying to impress or convince. You're measuring. That calm creates pressure. Because silence makes people expose themselves. They start oversharing, revealing their doubts, their need for approval, everything you need to understand them. Meanwhile, you stay composed, controlled, ready. That's emotional intelligence in motion. Remember this. Every conversation is an exchange of control. The one who speaks less holds more of it. The one who observes longer decides the outcome. Because silence is not weakness, it's weaponry. You're learning to use it. You're no longer here to be the loudest voice. You're here to be the sharpest mind. Your power is not in being seen. It's in seeing everything. You don't need to announce your awareness. You need to act from it. Observation is your superpower. Master it, and you'll never be surprised again. You've learned to watch without reacting, to see the truth behind noise. Now it's time to learn the next discipline, how to control your emotional reflexes when the pressure hits. Chapter 3, React Less, Command More. Every time you react, you hand over control. Every outburst, every defensive word, every emotional swing, it's a transaction. And what you trade away in that moment is power. You can't lead if you can't control yourself. Because leadership starts with response discipline, the ability to stay calm when the world tries to pull you into chaos. You'll never master people until you master your reactions to them. The truth is simple. Reaction is slavery. Restraint is freedom. When you react, someone else is programming you. They press a button and you perform. That's not strength. That's dependence. Real strength is quiet command. It's the ability to watch, to breathe, to decide when everyone else loses control. You don't let energy control you, you direct it. That's the difference between a follower and a leader. Followers react to pressure. Leaders use pressure as proof of who they are. You have a choice in every heated moment, a choice between emotion and execution, between ego and purpose, between noise and clarity. And every time you choose calm, you build power. You can feel it. The more you hold your reaction, the stronger your presence becomes. Because silence under fire is magnetic. You don't need to prove you're right. You don't need to fight every battle. You don't need to defend your worth. You need to command yourself. Imagine two people arguing. One is shouting, gesturing, losing composure. The other stands still, measured, breathing slowly. Which one do you respect more? Which one controls the room? Exactly. Control doesn't look like domination. It looks like stillness. You win when you stay unshaken. Because emotions are contagious. If yours are steady, you force others to stabilize around you. That's leadership through energy. React less, command more. It's not about suppression, it's about redirection. Your emotions are fuel, not instructions. Anger can drive excellence if you channel it through focus. Fear can sharpen awareness if you don't let it rule your movement. The discipline is in the delay. That small gap between stimulus and response, that's where your power lives. Train that space. Guard that pause. Because the pause is where wisdom replaces impulse. Here's how most people lose their power. They react to criticism. They react to disrespect. They react to every opinion, every rumor, every tone. And in doing so, they let the world script their mood. You can't afford that. You have goals that require composure. You have missions that demand neutrality. So when the moment comes, and it will, breathe. Let the emotion rise, let it pass, then decide how you'll act. That's mastery. Think of a general under fire. Bullets flying, chaos everywhere. If he panics, the army collapses. If he stays calm, the army follows. That's the psychology of power. People mirror the state of the one in charge. So if you want to command others, command yourself first. Your reaction is a signal. It tells people whether they can manipulate you or must respect you. Lose your temper once, and they'll push that button again. Stay calm once, and they'll learn never to try. React less, command more. Even with yourself. When you face setbacks, your first reaction is frustration. Fine, acknowledge it. Then replace it with focus. What can I control right now? You're not your emotions. You're the driver behind them. If you can steer anger toward effort, fear toward preparation, pain toward patience, you become unstoppable. Remember this line. It's not about emotion, it's about discipline. Emotion fades. Discipline compounds. The world remembers those who kept their head when everyone else lost theirs. You'll hear people say, I'm just passionate. But passion without control is chaos. Passion with discipline is power. So let your emotions serve you, not steer you. Every great athlete, every great leader, every great artist masters this. They feel deeply, but they decide slowly. You don't win by being numb. You win by being stable. Because emotional control isn't coldness, it's clarity. It's the ability to stay honest with yourself while staying composed with others. Here's your training for this week. 1. Delay every reaction by 5 seconds. When something triggers you, pause. Count slowly in silence. That's how you move from reflex to reason. 2. Replace reaction with reflection. Ask, what is this teaching me? Instead of, why is this happening to me? That single shift turns pain into progress. 3. Control your face and your body. Even when your heart races, your posture must stay calm. Your energy communicates before your words ever do. These small disciplines compound into presence, and presence builds authority. People will test you. They'll try to provoke, to bait, to drag you into noise. That's part of leadership. You'll feel it in business meetings, family arguments, even on social media. Every test is an invitation to prove whether you're reactive or in command. Decline that invitation. Stay still. Because your silence under pressure says more than 1,000 defenses ever could. You don't need to match their energy. You need to redirect it. When they get loud, get quieter. When they push harder, stand stronger. Because your stillness disarms them. Remember this forever. Emotional control is the foundation of every great victory. It's the bridge between chaos and composure, between reacting and ruling. When you react, you become a character in someone else's story. When you command yourself, you become the author of your own. So stop playing defense with your emotions. Start leading with your calm, because power doesn't need to prove, it just is. React less, command more. That's how leaders move. You've learned to stay calm in storms, to control the heat that steals your focus. Now it's time to cut off the noise completely, to rise above the drama that drains your discipline. Chapter 4. Detach from drama. Drama is emotional quicksand. It looks small at first. A conversation, a misunderstanding, a comment. But the moment you step into it, it pulls you down. Leaders don't drown in noise. They rise above it. Because drama feeds on attention and silence starves it. You can't be focused and dramatic at the same time. You must choose. Either you chase peace or you chase approval. But you can't chase both. Every day, life will tempt you with distraction. Gossip, arguments, petty conflicts. The undisciplined mind takes the bait. The disciplined mind walks away. Detachment isn't coldness, it's protection. It's emotional self-defense. Because when you stop responding to every spark, you stop burning out. You've got limited energy. Every time you involve yourself in drama, you're financing someone else's chaos. You're paying attention to what doesn't pay you back, and that's a losing investment. You don't need to prove you're right. You don't need to correct every lie. You don't need to fight every battle. You need to preserve your energy for what actually matters. Drama is a parasite. It can't survive without a host. The moment you stop feeding it with attention, it dies. Let them talk. Let them twist stories. Let them assume. You've got results to build, not rumors to chase. You'll be accused of arrogance for protecting your peace. Accept it, because peace is misunderstood by the chaotic. They can't stand your silence, so they'll invent a reason for it. Let them. Your detachment is their discomfort. Ask yourself this: how many hours have you lost replaying conversations that didn't matter? How many nights have you wasted defending yourself to people who will never understand? That's energy that could have built something, learned something, healed something. You think you're being strong by engaging, but real strength is walking away without explaining. Remember, you don't win arguments, you outgrow them. You don't need to prove peace, you need to live it. Detachment doesn't mean indifference, it means perspective. It's seeing things for what they are, not what your ego wants them to be. When someone attacks you, you don't ask, "Why me?" You ask, "What are they showing me about them?" Because projection is the favorite weapon of the insecure. People throw what they carry. Your job is to not catch it. You can't stop people from throwing negativity, but you can stop standing where they aim. That's detachment. You've got to train your peace like a muscle. At first, it's hard. You want to respond. You want to correct. But every time you resist that urge, you grow stronger. Your silence becomes heavier. Your absence becomes louder. Drama wants your attention because it wants control. When you refuse to play, you take your power back. You stop being a character in someone else's mess. You become the director of your own focus. Let's be clear. You're not above anyone. You're just beyond certain situations. There's a difference. You don't need revenge. You don't need validation. You need discipline. Because discipline keeps you from reacting when emotion begs you to. When someone insults you, smile. When someone misjudges you, let time correct them. Because the truth has perfect timing, and your silence gives it room to arrive. People will say you've changed, and that's fine. Growth always looks like betrayal to those who stayed the same. You owe no explanations for your evolution. You owe yourself peace. Detach from their noise. Detach from their judgment. Detach from the emotional traps that make you forget who you are. Because every time you lower your vibration to match someone's chaos, you betray your own progress. Don't go back just to prove a point. Move forward and make one instead. You can practice detachment daily. 1. Don't respond immediately. Let time do the talking. If it's not urgent, it doesn't deserve your reaction. 2. Protect your digital peace. Mute, block, unfollow. Your mind is not public property. Curate your space like your future depends on it. 3. Reconnect with solitude. Silence heals faster than debate. Every quiet hour adds strength to your perspective. Detachment isn't withdrawal, it's alignment. You're not escaping life. You're designing it intentionally. Here's the paradox. The less you engage with noise, the more respect you gain. People start to notice your calm, your focus, your refusal to play small games. They can't figure you out. And that's power, because mystery creates gravity. And gravity pulls opportunities to you. You stop chasing recognition. Recognition starts chasing you. Why? Because the world rewards emotional maturity, and detachment is the highest form of it. Remember this truth. Not every fire deserves your water. Some fires burn themselves out. Let them. You don't fix chaos by stepping into it. You fix chaos by outlasting it. Your silence is your filter. Your calm is your weapon. Your detachment is your armor. You're not running away. You're walking away on purpose. You're not avoiding conflict. You're mastering response. That's what emotional intelligence looks like. From now on, every time you feel the pull of drama, say this to yourself. This is not my arena. Because lions don't argue with hyenas. They observe. They protect their energy. They move on. Detach with grace. Because nothing screams strength louder than calm withdrawal. You don't need to explain. You don't need to defend. You don't need to react. You need to detach and dominate through peace. You've learned to protect your peace and rise above the noise. Now it's time to master the opposite of silence, deliberate, strategic speech. Because leaders don't talk less to stay quiet, they talk less to make every word count. Chapter 5. The Power of Strategic Speech. You say you want strength, but strength is built in silence. Not in crowds, not in applause, not in validation. It's built in the hours no one sees, in the space between distractions, when it's just you and your thoughts. Mental toughness isn't noise, it's quiet resistance. It's sitting alone with your discomfort and not reaching for escape. That's where warriors are made, in the silence everyone avoids. Solitude is the gym for your mind. It's where discipline lifts the heaviest weight, your own weakness. You can't be mentally tough if you're always surrounded by noise, because noise numbs reflection. It keeps you busy, but not better. It keeps you entertained, but not evolved. The world tells you to stay connected, but connection without boundaries is corruption. You lose yourself in the crowd. You forget your voice in the volume of others. You don't need more opinions. You need more silence. Every powerful mind you admire, from generals to inventors to athletes, had a relationship with solitude. They withdrew not to hide, but to sharpen. Because solitude clarifies what chaos clouds. In quiet, you face truth. You can't lie to yourself when there's no one else to perform for. You start to see what you really think, what you really fear, what you really want. That awareness is uncomfortable, but it's the root of all power. You'll never conquer the external world until you've conquered the internal one. And the battle begins when the noise fades. Most people can't handle solitude because it exposes them. It strips away distraction and reveals dependency. When there's nothing to scroll, nothing to impress, nothing to prove, what's left? Just you. And that's the moment that breaks most people, or makes them unbreakable. Because solitude forces you to build from within. You can't borrow motivation. You can't outsource peace. You can't fake clarity. You have to create it, alone. Mental toughness in solitude looks like this. Waking up early and keeping your word when no one would know if you didn't. Sitting with your fears and dissecting them instead of drowning them in distraction. Working on your craft when there's no feedback, no likes, no witnesses. That's self-respect in motion. That's integrity without an audience. And that's what separates the consistent from the conditional. Anyone can look disciplined when someone's watching. True mental toughness is private discipline. Doing the right thing when there's zero recognition. That's leadership. When you learn to be alone, you stop being lonely because you start enjoying your own company. You realize your thoughts aren't enemies. They're teachers. They tell you what needs healing, what needs building, what needs letting go. Most people run from silence because silence reveals truth, but leaders crave it because truth sharpens direction. Solitude gives you perspective. It zooms you out from emotion. It reminds you that everything urgent isn't important, that the best moves are made from calm, not chaos. Here's what solitude teaches you. 1. Self-sufficiency. When you can motivate yourself, you stop depending on external approval. You become your own fuel. 2. Clarity. In silence, you hear your priorities more clearly than in 1,000 conversations. That's why isolation produces innovation. 3. Recovery. You can't stay strong if you never unplug. Silence resets your system. It's mental hygiene. You don't need to disappear for months. Start with minutes. Create daily pockets of solitude. 10 minutes before sunrise. A walk without your phone. A night where you let your mind wander instead of scrolling. Those moments seem small, but they're sacred. They reconnect you to control. They remind you that peace isn't found. It's created through choice. Every moment alone is a deposit into your focus account, and those deposits compound into unshakable calm. Understand this. Being alone doesn't make you antisocial. It makes you powerful enough to choose your company wisely. When you enjoy solitude, you stop tolerating noise. When you find peace within, you stop chasing validation without. You don't fear being left out. You fear losing your focus because you know what distraction costs: your edge, your confidence, your command. The strongest minds move in silence not because they're hiding, but because they're building. You'll know you've mastered solitude when you stop needing constant stimulation, when silence feels like a sanctuary instead of a sentence, when being alone feels natural, not lonely. That's when you've crossed the line between dependent and disciplined. You've become your own anchor, and nothing, no failure, no loss, no rejection can unbalance you again. Because when you know how to sit still with your own thoughts, you can stand tall in any storm. Let others chase attention. Let them drown in drama and validation. You're training in silence. You're learning to listen to your instincts, to hear your intuition, to strengthen your self-command. That's what solitude builds. Command over your mind, your energy, and your life. When you return from solitude, you carry presence. People can feel it, that unshakable stillness. You speak less, move slower, decide cleaner. Because clarity lives where noise dies. Remember this: solitude isn't punishment, it's preparation. Every quiet hour is an investment in your future resilience. The more comfortable you are alone, the less leverage the world has over you. Because they can take your status, your job, your environment, but they can't touch your inner calm. That's the ultimate form of freedom. That's mental toughness, and that's the advantage of solitude. You don't need noise, you don't need validation. You need silence and the courage to sit in it. Because the mind that conquers solitude conquers everything. You've learned to build calm and focus in solitude. Now it's time to bring that control into the fire. When pressure hits, when emotions flare, when the world tests your patience. Chapter 7. Emotional neutrality under pressure. You say you want strength, but strength is built in silence. Not in crowds, not in applause, not in validation. It's built in the hours no one sees, in the space between distractions, when it's just you and your thoughts. Mental toughness isn't noise, it's quiet resistance. It's sitting alone with your discomfort and not reaching for escape. That's where warriors are made, in the silence everyone avoids. Solitude is the gym for your mind. It's where discipline lifts the heaviest weight, your own weakness. You can't be mentally tough if you're always surrounded by noise, because noise numbs reflection. It keeps you busy, but not better. It keeps you entertained, but not evolved. The world tells you to stay connected, but connection without boundaries is corruption. You lose yourself in the crowd. You forget your voice in the volume of others. You don't need more opinions. You need more silence. Every powerful mind you admire, from generals to inventors to athletes, had a relationship with solitude. They withdrew not to hide, but to sharpen. Because solitude clarifies what chaos clouds. In quiet, you face truth. You can't lie to yourself when there's no one else to perform for. You start to see what you really think, what you really fear, what you really want. That awareness is uncomfortable, but it's the root of all power. You'll never conquer the external world until you've conquered the internal one. And the battle begins when the noise fades. Most people can't handle solitude because it exposes them. It strips away distraction and reveals dependency. When there's nothing to scroll, nothing to impress, nothing to prove, what's left? Just you. And that's the moment that breaks most people, or makes them unbreakable. Because solitude forces you to build from within. You can't borrow motivation. You can't outsource peace. You can't fake clarity. You have to create it, alone. Mental toughness in solitude looks like this: waking up early and keeping your word when no one would know if you didn't. Sitting with your fears and dissecting them instead of drowning them in distraction. Working on your craft when there's no feedback, no likes, no witnesses. That's self-respect in motion. That's integrity without an audience. And that's what separates the consistent from the conditional. Anyone can look disciplined when someone's watching. True mental toughness is private discipline. Doing the right thing when there's zero recognition. That's leadership. When you learn to be alone, you stop being lonely because you start enjoying your own company. You realize your thoughts aren't enemies. They're teachers. They tell you what needs healing, what needs building, what needs letting go. Most people run from silence because silence reveals truth, but leaders crave it because truth sharpens direction. Solitude gives you perspective. It zooms you out from emotion. It reminds you that everything urgent isn't important, that the best moves are made from calm, not chaos. Here's what solitude teaches you. 1. Self-sufficiency. When you can motivate yourself, you stop depending on external approval. You become your own fuel. 2. Clarity. In silence, you hear your priorities more clearly than in 1,000 conversations. That's why isolation produces innovation. 3. Recovery. You can't stay strong if you never unplug. Silence resets your system. It's mental hygiene. You don't need to disappear for months. Start with minutes. Create daily pockets of solitude. 10 minutes before sunrise. A walk without your phone. A night where you let your mind wander instead of scrolling. Those moments seem small, but they're sacred. They reconnect you to control. They remind you that peace isn't found. It's created through choice. Every moment alone is a deposit into your focus account, and those deposits compound into unshakable calm. Understand this. Being alone doesn't make you antisocial. It makes you powerful enough to choose your company wisely. When you enjoy solitude, you stop tolerating noise. When you find peace within, you stop chasing validation without. You don't fear being left out. You fear losing your focus. Because you know what distraction costs. Your edge, your confidence, your command. The strongest minds move in silence not because they're hiding, but because they're building. You'll know you've mastered solitude when you stop needing constant stimulation. When silence feels like a sanctuary instead of a sentence. When being alone feels natural, not lonely. That's when you've crossed the line between dependent and disciplined. You've become your own anchor. And nothing, no failure, no loss, no rejection can unbalance you again. Because when you know how to sit still with your own thoughts, you can stand tall in any storm. Let others chase attention. Let them drown in drama and validation. You're training in silence. You're learning to listen to your instincts, to hear your intuition, to strengthen your self-command. That's what solitude builds. Command over your mind, your energy, and your life. When you return from solitude, you carry presence. People can feel it, that unshakable stillness. You speak less, move slower, decide cleaner. Because clarity lives where noise dies. Remember this, solitude isn't punishment, it's preparation. Every quiet hour is an investment in your future resilience. The more comfortable you are alone, the less leverage the world has over you. Because they can take your status, your job, your environment, but they can't touch your inner calm. That's the ultimate form of freedom. That's mental toughness, and that's the advantage of solitude. You don't need noise, you don't need validation. You need silence and the courage to sit in it. Because the mind that conquers solitude conquers everything. You've learned to build calm and focus in solitude. Now it's time to bring that control into the fire. When pressure hits, when emotions flare, when the world tests your patience. Chapter 7. Emotional neutrality under pressure. Pressure reveals truth. When life squeezes you, the real you shows up. Not the version you post, not the mask you wear. And in those moments, emotion becomes the test. Do you control it, or does it control you? The answer defines your destiny. Because under pressure, emotion is a currency. Spend it wrong, and you go broke in seconds. Spend it wisely, and you buy respect, time, and power. That's what emotional neutrality is. It's not numbness. It's precision under fire. It's the ability to think clearly when everyone else is drowning in reaction. When you lose control of emotion, you lose access to logic. You stop leading and start leaking. Anger floods judgment. Fear freezes potential. Ego blinds vision. But neutrality, calm, centered, measured neutrality, keeps you sharp. The world worships passion, but passion without control is destruction. You don't need less emotion. You need trained emotion. That's the difference between explosion and execution. Every great performer trains neutrality. Soldiers, surgeons, athletes, they all practice staying calm under chaos. Why? Because panic kills performance. The heart races, the hands shake, the mind spirals. One bad reaction can undo years of preparation. So they learn to breathe through pressure, to separate feeling from function. That's leadership, feeling everything but showing nothing that weakens direction. You'll face moments that test this. Betrayal, failure, humiliation, confrontation. In those seconds, your body will beg you to react. Your pride will demand it. But that's where the real battle begins. Not outside you, but inside. Every second you delay your reaction, your strength doubles. Because self-control is exponential. The longer you hold it, the stronger it grows. You don't have to suppress emotion. You have to process it privately, not perform it publicly. That's maturity. Remember this. Emotion is information, not instruction. You can listen to it without obeying it. Fear says, slow down. Anger says, something's wrong. Sadness says something needs healing, but none of them say, lose control. You are not your feelings. You are the commander of them. And a commander never panics in front of the troops. When pressure rises, shrink your world. Forget the crowd. Forget the outcome. Focus on execution. In those moments, your breath is your control switch. Breathe slower than the situation. If the world moves fast, move slow. That's how you reverse chaos, by refusing to mirror it. Calm is not natural, it's trained. You practice it when things are small so you can master it when things are big. Traffic, conflict, deadlines. Every daily irritation is training. You're not being annoyed, you're being conditioned. Let me repeat this truth. Calm is contagious. When you stay grounded, you reframe the entire environment. Your composure forces others to regulate themselves. You become the emotional thermostat, not the thermometer. You set the temperature instead of reacting to it. That's what real influence looks like. People follow the one who stays steady when everyone else shakes. Here's how to train emotional neutrality. 1. Separate stimulus from story. When something triggers you, don't build a narrative around it. Drop the, they're disrespecting me. Replace it with, that's data. I'll adjust. Emotion shrinks when you remove ego. 2. Use micropauses. Before every major response, a message, a meeting, a decision, take one breath. That breath will save you from saying what your future self will regret. 3. Reframe adversity. Pressure isn't punishment, it's preparation. Every challenge you survive expands your tolerance for the next. People think neutrality is weakness. It's not. It's the ultimate strength. Because it means your emotions serve your purpose instead of sabotaging it. When you stay neutral, you can't be manipulated. Insults don't move you. Praise doesn't distract you. You operate from principles, not moods. And that makes you unpredictable, which makes you powerful. The loudest person in the room isn't the strongest. The calmest one is. Because calm is control, and control wins every time. Think of the greatest athletes at their peak. The final seconds of a game, the crowd screaming, the weight of the world on their shoulders. What do they look like? Still, focused, expressionless. They've turned chaos into tunnel vision. That's emotional neutrality in action. Composure under maximum heat. And when the world sees that calm, it looks like magic. But it's not magic. It's mental training. It's thousands of quiet moments where they practice not reacting. Understand this. You can't stop the waves, but you can surf them. Neutrality is not about denying emotion. It's about directing it. Channel fear into focus. Channel anger into precision. Channel doubt into discipline. That's the alchemy of strength. You transform raw emotion into refined execution. That's how pressure becomes power. From now on, stop saying, I'm stressed. Say, I'm being tested. Because language shapes perception, and perception shapes performance. When you see pressure as a test, you start looking for answers instead of excuses. You stop breaking down and start breaking through. Pressure doesn't create weakness, it reveals where it hides. So use it, study it, thank it. Because every test is proof that you're still in the game. Neutral doesn't mean empty, it means balanced. It means you feel everything but reveal nothing that weakens your position. It means you care deeply but act deliberately. That's what separates the reactive from the reliable. The reliable are rare. They're the ones people turn to when chaos erupts. because everyone trusts the one who stays calm. Be that person. The world is desperate for them. So when pressure hits, breathe, observe, decide. Let everyone else panic. You stay neutral, because your calm is your crown. When emotion explodes, let stillness answer. When chaos rises, let clarity lead. That's how you turn storms into strategy. That's how you rise without reacting. You don't need to be unfeeling. You need to be unshakable. That's emotional neutrality under pressure. And that's how leaders are made. You've learned to stay calm when the world explodes, to hold your center under fire. Now it's time to sharpen your next weapon, the art of listening. Because silence isn't just self-control, it's intelligence gathering. Chapter 8, The Discipline of Listening. Most people hear, very few listen. Hearing is passive, listening is power. Because the person who listens learns everything: motives, fears, desires, weaknesses. While everyone else is busy talking, the listener is collecting intelligence. You don't become powerful by having all the answers. You become powerful by understanding the questions. And you can't understand what you refuse to hear. Listening is not silence. It's strategy. It's gathering data while others expose themselves. Every word someone speaks is a breadcrumb leading to who they truly are. Their tone, their timing, their repetition, all reveal patterns. The world gives away its secrets for free. You just have to be quiet enough to receive them. You can't read a room if you're filling it with your own noise. You can't predict outcomes if you're addicted to talking. And you can't lead people you don't understand. That's why the greatest leaders listen twice as much as they speak. The undisciplined listener waits to reply. The disciplined listener listens to understand. You can feel the difference. One is preparing a response, the other is reading your soul. Every conversation has two levels: what's said and what's meant. Words are the surface. Emotion is the current. Trained listeners swim beneath the surface. They hear what isn't said, the hesitation, the inconsistency, the need hiding behind the sentence. That's emotional intelligence in motion. When you master listening, people start to reveal their playbook. They show you their limits without realizing it. They confess their priorities, their values, their insecurities. All you have to do is stay silent long enough. Most people are so desperate to be understood that they overshare everything. Let them. Your silence creates a vacuum they rush to fill, and in that flood of words lies all the information you need. Listening is leverage, and leverage wins negotiations, relationships, and wars. Let's be clear, listening isn't weakness, it's control, because you guide people by letting them express themselves first. They relax, they trust, they reveal. And when they finish, you already have the map, the data to move with precision. Your response is short, clean, unshakable. That's how you lead without raising your voice. People follow those who make them feel heard, because being heard feels like being respected. And respect is the strongest currency in human interaction. The discipline of listening starts with the discipline of ego. You must stop needing to be the smartest person in the room, because the smartest person doesn't talk the most. They learn the most. Let others show off. Let them dominate the air with noise. You sit back and collect data. Every minute you listen, you grow sharper. Every pause you allow, you earn clarity. Every silence you hold, you increase authority. Because silence creates space, and space commands attention. Here's how to train the discipline of listening. 1. Be fully present. Put down your phone. Stop rehearsing your answer. Look them in the eyes and absorb what's being said. True listening is focus in its purest form. 2. Ask questions that go deeper. When someone stops talking, don't fill the gap. Ask, what made you feel that way? Or, tell me more about that. They'll keep revealing and you'll keep learning. 3. Record insights, not gossip. After conversations, note patterns. You'll start to see who's consistent, who's emotional, who's strategic. That's social intelligence in practice. Listening is also self-defense, because you can't be manipulated if you understand intention. When you really listen, you hear the small shifts, the contradictions, the rehearsed lines, the emotional hooks. You start seeing through performance into motive. That's how you stop being controlled by words and start controlling the conversation. Silence gives you vision, It turns the invisible visible. Most people underestimate a quiet listener, and that's exactly the point. They mistake silence for passivity, but silence is camouflage. You're reading, processing, calculating, and when you finally speak, your words slice through the noise like a blade, because you've built them on knowledge, not emotion. Remember, information is ammunition. Listening loads the chamber. Speaking fires the shot. Never reverse the order. You'll notice something when you truly start listening. People open up faster. Conversations get deeper. And suddenly you start to see how rare this skill is. Everyone's screaming to be heard. Almost no one's learning to listen. That's why the listener always wins. Because they understand the landscape while everyone else is lost in sound. Listening also refines your empathy. Not the soft kind, the strategic kind. It helps you manage people better, lead teams better, and respond smarter. Because you can't lead feelings you don't recognize. You can't calm storms you can't hear forming. The disciplined listener senses tension before it explodes. They diffuse situations before they burn. They control environments quietly. That's influence, subtle but total. So how do you know you've mastered the discipline of listening? Simple. When silence no longer feels awkward. When you can sit through a pause without rushing to fill it. When you can hear criticism without defending yourself. When you can hear pain without taking it personally. That's control. That's power. That's peace. Because the person who listens most deeply always leads most effectively. From now on, make this your practice. Enter every conversation with the goal to understand, not to respond. Let people reveal themselves. Let silence do the heavy lifting. Every time you choose to listen instead of react, you rise above average. Every time you collect information instead of giving opinions, you gain advantage. Every time you stay quiet while others talk, you move closer to mastery. You don't need to dominate the room, you just need to hear it clearly. Because awareness, born from disciplined listening, is the foundation of intelligent action. Listen deeply, act precisely, lead quietly. That's the discipline of listening. You've learned how to listen, to extract truth from noise and power from silence. Now it's time to master the next frontier of self-command, boundaries. Because sometimes the most powerful word a leader can say is one syllable long. Chapter 9, Say No Without Guilt. Every yes costs you something. Time, energy, focus, peace. Every time you say yes without thinking, you're saying no to something that actually matters. Boundaries are not selfish. They're survival. And the people who master boundaries don't have more time than you. They just waste less of it on things that don't build them. Saying no isn't rejection, it's direction. It's how you steer your life toward purpose instead of chaos. You've been conditioned to believe that kindness means compliance, that being good means being available, that saying no makes you cold, difficult, or arrogant. But that's a lie. Because if your yes has no limits, your value has no meaning. The most powerful people in the world protect their yes like treasure. They understand that every commitment is a contract, one signed with their time and energy, and they don't sign lightly. Saying no without guilt is emotional maturity. It's understanding that you can care about someone and still refuse them. It's realizing that your peace is more important than their comfort. And it's knowing that a temporary discomfort is better than long-term resentment. When you say yes out of guilt, you plant resentment. When you say no out of respect, you plant clarity. You don't owe everyone your energy. You owe yourself your sanity. The weak yes is driven by fear. Fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of conflict. But the powerful no is driven by clarity. Clarity of mission, values, and priorities. When you know your goals, your boundaries write themselves. Every request runs through a filter. Does this align with my direction? Does this protect my peace? Does this respect my time? If the answer is no, say no. You don't need to justify it. You don't need to explain. A clean no is a complete sentence. People will test your boundaries. They'll call you selfish when their manipulation stops working. They'll guilt trip you because guilt used to get results. Let them. Your job isn't to keep everyone happy. It's to stay aligned with your purpose. And the truth is, you can't build greatness while living for approval. The world doesn't reward people who say yes to everything. It rewards those who say yes to what counts. Here's the paradox. The more you say no, the more valuable your yes becomes, because scarcity creates worth. When people know you don't give your time easily, they start to respect it. They prepare better. They communicate clearer. They stop wasting it. Boundaries teach people how to treat you. And if you don't teach them, they'll assume you have none. Never blame someone for crossing a line you didn't draw. Let's be practical. Here's how to say no without guilt or apology. 1. Be clear, not cruel. You don't owe a speech. You owe honesty. Say, I can't commit to that right now, or that doesn't align with my priorities. That's it. No essays, no excuses. 2, don't over-explain. Every explanation invites debate. The moment you start defending your decision, you give others power over it. A short no ends the conversation. A long maybe opens negotiation. 3, let silence do the work. Say no, then stop talking. Silence reinforces confidence. Over-explaining reveals guilt. The first few times you say no, you'll feel uncomfortable. That's normal, because your brain has been trained to associate peace with people-pleasing. But repetition rewires that. Every boundary you hold without guilt strengthens self-respect. Every no you deliver calmly redefines your identity. You stop being the one who's always available. You become the one who's always intentional. Boundaries aren't walls. They're filters. They don't shut people out. They filter energy in. They keep the right people close and the wrong ones out. And the people who respect your boundaries are the ones who deserve your yes. The ones who don't were never allies, just users of your time. You don't lose friends by saying no. You lose manipulators disguised as friends. That's not loss, that's cleansing. You must remember this truth. No is love. It's love for your future self, who needs rest. It's love for your vision, which needs focus. It's love for your peace, which needs protection. You can't pour from an empty cup, and you can't fill that cup if everyone's drinking from it. Your number is how you refill it. It's how you regain control over your schedule, your energy, your priorities, because discipline without boundaries is burnout waiting to happen. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be effective. And effectiveness requires elimination of distractions, obligations, and people who drain more than they give. Every no is an act of leadership. Every no is self-command. Every no is a declaration that your time has value. Let others say yes to everything. Let them scatter their focus across meaningless commitments. You're building something bigger, and that requires protection. From now on, treat no as your guardian word. Use it with confidence. Use it with calm. Use it without apology, because you don't owe explanations for respecting your limits. You owe yourself a life that feels like freedom, not obligation. You don't need to be available 24/7. You don't need to justify peace. You don't need to feel guilty for choosing yourself. You just need to protect what matters. And that starts with 2 letters, N-O. You've learned how to guard your peace, your time, and your energy. Now it's time to pull everything together, to live this mindset as a way of life every day in silence and strength. Chapter 10, Silence as a Way of Life. Silence is not the absence of sound, it's the presence of control. It's what happens when noise dies and clarity speaks. You started this journey learning to stop explaining yourself. You learned to observe, to react less, to detach, to speak strategically, to master solitude, to stay calm, to listen deeply, and to set boundaries. Now you arrive here, the destination of all discipline, a life built on silence, not the silence of fear, the silence of focus, the silence of strength. The world is addicted to noise. It celebrates constant talking, endless opinions, nonstop stimulation. Everyone's trying to be heard, but few are trying to understand. Everyone's performing, but no one's present. You must choose differently. You must build a life that operates from inner stillness, because in a loud world, silence becomes a superpower. When you can stay quiet, you can see clearly. When you can see clearly, you can act precisely. When you can act precisely, you can lead effortlessly. Silence is your reset button. It's where the chaos of the day dissolves and your strength regenerates. In silence, you don't lose energy, you recharge it. That's why the most focused people are often the least visible. They're not hiding, they're building. They're not avoiding, they're aligning. The louder the world becomes, the deeper they go into silence. Because silence is where the truth lives. Noise distracts, silence decides. A life of silence doesn't mean isolation, it means intention. It means you no longer speak from impulse, you speak from insight. You no longer react from ego, you respond from purpose. You no longer chase attention, you create momentum. Silence refines everything. Your habits, your relationships, your direction. Because when you stop explaining, you start observing. When you stop talking, you start hearing. When you stop rushing, you start leading. Imagine waking up and moving through your day with quiet confidence. You're not announcing your goals. You're not defending your standards. You're simply living them. No need for validation. No need for noise. You're centered, clear, calm, and the world feels that energy, the gravity of your presence. That's what silence creates, unspoken authority. People trust the one who doesn't need to prove. They follow the one who doesn't need to shout, because silence signals control, and control commands respect. Here's the paradox of silence. The quieter you become, the more you hear. The less you say, the more you see. And the slower you move, the faster you progress. Because silence multiplies awareness, and awareness sharpens action. Every distraction you silence gives birth to focus. Every reaction you silence gives birth to power. Every unnecessary word you silence gives birth to credibility. This is the cycle of mastery, the transformation of chaos into clarity. You must train silence daily. 1. Create sacred, quiet time. At least 15 minutes a day with no noise, no screens, no conversations. Just you, your thoughts, your breath. This is mental maintenance, your daily sharpening ritual. 2. Speak only when you can add value. Before you open your mouth, ask, does this move the mission forward? If not, let silence answer instead. 3. Don't explain peace. You don't owe the world an explanation for your calm. Let people misunderstand your quiet. You're not being distant, you're being disciplined. Silence also protects your growth, because not everyone deserves to know your next move. Energy leaks through unnecessary sharing. Every time you talk about a plan instead of executing it, you dilute its power. Real leaders build in silence and announce through results. Their wins speak louder than any caption ever could. They don't say, I'm working. They just show up stronger. You don't need to tell people you're evolving. They'll feel it in your absence. They'll see it in your results. They'll hear it in your tone when you finally speak. Silence as a way of life means you no longer chase noise for validation. You don't argue opinions. You don't fight for attention. You don't react to provocation. You choose what deserves a response, and most things don't. That's the discipline, knowing that not every question deserves an answer, not every fight deserves a punch, not every insult deserves energy, because your peace is too expensive to spend cheaply. People will misunderstand your silence. They'll call it arrogance. They'll say you've changed. They'll accuse you of thinking you're better. Smile. That's what they say about anyone who stops performing for approval. Silence threatens insecurity because it reflects truth. Your calm reminds them of their chaos. Your boundaries remind them of their lack of discipline. Your stillness exposes their noise. Let it. That's part of the process. You'll know you've embraced silence as a way of life when your peace is no longer negotiable, when your energy feels sacred, when your words are rare but powerful, when you no longer chase understanding, you create clarity within yourself. Because once you've learned to move in silence, you can't go back to the noise. The world will try to pull you back through gossip, validation, distraction. But you'll smile quietly. You've outgrown it. You've graduated to control. Understand this. Silence isn't retreat. It's refinement. It's the art of conserving energy until the right moment demands it. Every wise warrior knows this. Never reveal your next move until it's already too late for anyone to stop it. That's the power of silence. It hides preparation behind peace. While others talk about what they'll do, you're already doing it. While others seek approval, you're building authority. While others waste words, you're collecting wins. That's what a silent life produces. Unstoppable results. When you reach this stage, everything changes. You don't need to be the loudest in the room. You are the room. Your presence becomes the message. Your calm becomes the statement. Your silence becomes the proof. That's mastery. That's leadership. That's peace. You don't need to shout. You don't need to convince. You don't need to explain. You just live in silence and let your life speak. You've reached the end of this journey, from explaining to executing, from reacting to commanding, from noise to power. Now it's time to seal the transformation with one final message, closing the discipline of power. Every time you react, you give away control. Every time you explain, you drain your energy. The discipline of silence is not about muting your voice. It's about mastering your power. Speak only when it builds, not when it defends. Listen more than you announce. Observe more than you respond. Because the quiet one always knows what the loud one never sees. Your challenge is simple. This week, say less. React slower. Let your silence do the talking. The world will notice, and so will you. That's how leaders are made.